Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about creepy legends of the Appalachian Mountains. One ranger hears a scream that doesn't fade, it just stops, like someone hit mute. And a biologist finds a shrine of bones tied together with bark and something circling his cabin at night. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now let's get into it. I'm a wildlife biologist. About 3 years ago, I took a short-term contract in southeastern Kentucky. It was part of a state-funded project monitoring mammal populations in the Appalachian corridor. The job involved setting up camera traps, logging habitat data, and recording animal activity. The pay was modest, but they provided free gas, a decent daily allowance, and a small solar-powered cabin deep in the Daniel Boone National Forest. The cabin was about 6 miles off the nearest paved road, accessible via a barely maintained fire trail behind a rusted cattle gate. My truck's GPS lost signal halfway there, and there was no cell reception. Communication was limited to a cranky two-ways radio mounted above the kitchen sink. The cabin itself wasn't bad. Single bed, propane stove, a water tank fed from a stream uphill. After years of sleeping in hammocks and on wet leaves during my master's research, having a roof and a fridge felt like luxury. The first week went smoothly. I set up camera traps along old trails, logged deer signs, flagged fresh scat. A few cameras captured foxes. One even caught a bobcat. I noticed some tracks near the ridge that didn't match anything obvious, but assumed it was a black bear, common in the region. Things changed during the second week. I hiked out to check one of the southern traps and found the entire camera rig had been moved, just a few feet. But now it was pointed almost straight up into the canopy. The tree strap was intact. The lock wasn't tampered with. It hadn't fallen, it looked intentional. I checked the memory card, mostly blanks triggered by wind or bugs. Then one clip, 3:02 AM, captured something fast moving across the far edge of the frame. It wasn't clear, just a blur, too tall and narrow to be an animal. Could have been a poacher or maybe a squatter. I reset the camera, strapped it tighter, and didn't think much of it. 2 nights later, I was logging notes at the kitchen table when I heard whistling outside. It was faint at first. 2 notes, low and rising, like someone signaling a dog. I froze. There were no other cabins for miles, and I hadn't seen a hiker in over a week. I shut off the lamp and listened. The whistle came again. Closer. Same 2 notes. Clear, deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight and .22 rifle and stepped onto the porch. I waited, aimed low. I scanned the trees. Still nothing. I slept with the rifle beside me that night. Didn't hear it again. In the morning, I chalked it up to wind and fatigue. Later that day, I went out to check the camera that had been moved before. It was gone. Not just shifted, ripped off the tree entirely. The metal housing was 30 feet downhill, half buried in leaf litter. The strap was torn, not cut. The unit was dented like it had been thrown. The card was still inside. I reviewed the clips on my laptop. One video, again around 3:00 AM East, showed a tall shape entering the frame. It moved unnaturally fast and bent at the middle like its limbs didn't align. It passed out of view before the camera shut off. I called the district ranger and asked if any staff or rangers were patrolling near my area. He said no. I asked about squatters. He paused, then said, "You'll hear things. The forest's old." That was all. Week 4, I hiked deeper than usual, off-grid near a ravine marked only on the topographic maps. I followed deer trails for miles before I hit a sudden, awful smell. Sweet and rotten, like a bloated carcass in the heat. I found the source not far off the path, a white-tailed doe, gutted but not eaten. Its spine was bent at a perfect right angle, front legs folded under. Its head was gone, completely removed, not torn. No blood trail, just the body. I took photos, didn't touch anything. That night, The whistling came back. This time it circled the cabin. 2 notes, slow and patient, like someone walking a tight circle around the perimeter. I sat in the dark, with the rifle in my lap and the radio dialed into static. Once, this sound came from right outside the wall near the bed. I didn't sleep. The whistling didn't stop until almost sunrise. Week 5, I found something else. While mapping a game trail northeast of the cabin, I noticed broken branches and a patch of dirt cleared unnaturally. I followed it and found what I can only describe as a shrine. Bones, some small and some clearly animal, tied together with bark and braided fiber. Feathers arranged in a sunburst around a pile of gray ash. Hanging from the trees above were strings, maybe hair, maybe fur, wrapped in a circular lattice like a dream catcher. It looked ancient but not abandoned. I marked the location and turned back. I didn't touch it. Halfway home, I heard footsteps behind me. Steady, human pace. Pausing when I paused. I turned 3 times, nothing. Back at the cabin, I bolted the door and stayed inside. That night, something stepped onto the roof. I heard the weight shift. I counted 4 slow steps, then silence, then the whistling again, directly overhead. 2 notes, calm. Week 6, I officially requested to leave early. I said there were potential threats in the area. The project had radioed back saying they'd arrange for pickup at the end of the week. They asked if I could tough it out a few more nights. I agreed. I kept the lights off, moved my cot to the kitchen, slept with a rifle under my sleeping bag. At 3:17 a.m. on the 3rd night, I woke to complete silence. No crickets, no frogs. The forest was dead. Then I heard something scrape along the wall, slow and dragging, like claws across wood. I stayed still. Then the whistling again. 4 notes this time. Not the usual 2. The tone was the same, but it went on longer, like it was calling. I whispered, "Who's out there?" Silence. Then a voice answered from the other side of the wall. It was my voice, copied exactly. "Who's out there?" Something passed the window. I didn't see it, just the shadow. Then a thud on the porch. I fired a warning shot through the door. The echo rang out into the trees. Silence again. I stayed up till daylight, finger on the trigger. In the morning, I found prints outside the door. Not boots. Bare feet, long toes, wide pads. The stride was too long. The prints went to the threshold and stopped. I packed everything by noon. When the ranger came, I didn't talk. He just nodded like he knew. I kept one of the memory cards from the camera I'd recovered earlier. I watched the final video after I got home. At 3:09 a.m., the camera picked up movement. A figure stepped into frame, very tall, limbs thin and too long. It moved oddly, smooth, like floating, but the feet touched the ground. Its face was pale, stretched, no eyes visible, just a long jaw and something that looked like a grin. Looked directly into the lens. Then it whistled. I'm a park ranger. Not going to say exactly where, just that it's somewhere in the Blue Ridge stretch of the Appalachians. It's a small preserve, not one of the big-named parks with tourists every 5 feet. We've got narrow trails, deep woods, a couple old structures nobody remembers the history of, and more black bears than cell service. It's the kind of place people pass over on road trips, unless they're lost or real into hiking, with no crowd. I've been working here about 3 years now, mostly days. I check trail markers, patch fences, pick up wrappers, and occasionally remind folks not to wander off into ravines trying to chase chipmunks with their phones. The dumbest thing I'd seen before last year was some guy, tourist from Jersey, I think, who thought it'd be spiritual to feed a bear trail mix from his hand. I spent the next 2 hours chasing that bear off the parking lot while he cried into a granola bar. So yeah, it was mostly that kind of stuff. Until last fall, Dan, another ranger, asked if I could cover his overnight loop. He said his kid had the flu. I owed him a couple of shifts, so I agreed. Usually I steer clear of night patrols. It's not a fear thing. I've just seen enough weird animal behavior after sundown to know that visibility makes all the difference. You can't react to something you don't see until it's already close. This route was one of the longer ones, just under 6 miles, winding along the West Ridge and ending at an old fire lookout tower, before looping back toward base. Isolated. No scenic overlooks, no campsites. Honestly, we never get hikers out there unless they miss a turn. I figured I'd make decent time and be back before 2 a.m. I left base around 8:15. It was already dark, and that kind of darkness where the headlamp barely pushes past a few feet. I double-checked the flare gun, made sure the sidearm was loaded, radio was charged, everything strapped tight. First couple miles were what you'd expect. Some distant owl calls, brush rustling from what was probably a raccoon, maybe a fox. I was actually humming to myself at one point. Dumb habit, but it helps pass the time when you're trying not to think about how far out you are. Somewhere just past mile 3, I stepped off the trail to take a piss. Nothing dramatic, just one of those pause and get it over with moments. And that's when it happened. The silence hit me first, not the regular quiet of the woods. This was nothing. No crickets, no wind. Even my own boots on the dirt didn't make the usual crunch. I zipped up halfway, froze, and stood there like an idiot, trying to figure out if my ears were playing tricks on me. I clicked my light off for a second. Nothing. Just pitch black trees and the kind of stillness that doesn't feel like nature. It feels like waiting. I waved the flashlight around. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Maybe a deer or a bear crouched down. But there was nothing, just forest. And something in my gut twisted. Hard. I should have turned around, radioed in, said I felt sick or twisted an ankle. But I didn't. Instead, I picked up the pace and kept walking. Not quite running, but faster than usual. I kept glancing behind me like I was expecting someone to be there. About a mile later, I reached the tower. It's maybe 30, 35 feet high, built back in the 50s or 60s. Somehow still standing, probably because nobody ever uses it. The stairs groan like hell, but the platform up top is solid enough. I went up, signed into the maintenance log. Last entry was from that morning, and stepped out for a look around. That's when I heard the scream. It started low and kept going, too long. Oh, it didn't sound like a human, didn't sound like any animal I know, and I've heard most of what lives around here. It had this horrible warble to it, like it was trying to stay in one note, but couldn't hold it. It stretched out for maybe 10 seconds, and then it just stopped. Not faded, just cut off, like someone pressed mute in the middle of it. I stepped back into the tower's cabin and tried the radio. Static. Switched channels, more static. Tried again, nothing. That's when my hands started shaking a little. I wasn't about to stay up there. I climbed down, slower this time, and got back on the trail. Not long after, maybe 10 minutes, I saw something up ahead. My beam hit it, something lying across the trail. At first, I thought it was a branch or a backpack someone dropped. It was a deer. It looked like it had just collapsed there, mid-stride. Eyes wide, tongue out, frozen in this horrible expression like it died trying to say something. But no blood, no visible injuries, just twisted. Legs bent wrong, spine curled in a way that didn't make sense. Like it had been crushed from the inside, but the skin wasn't broken. No bite marks, no claw rips. I squatted next to it and almost gagged. The smell was awful. Not fresh death. Rot. Thick, syrupy, like this thing had been sitting in a dumpster all week. But when I touched it, it was still warm. That's when I saw the tracks. Bare feet, but not human. Too long, toes splayed out like claws. The prints circled the deer once, then just stopped. No leading away, just a weird mess of shapes that ended in the dirt like someone disappeared mid-step. I scanned the trees again, still nothing, but the flashlight was shaking in my hand now, and I couldn't tell if it was from the cold or what I was thinking might be out there. Then the scream came again, closer. I bolted, not full sprint, but enough that my legs were already burning after a minute. Branches whipped at my arms, leaves stuck to my face. I kept the beam forward and tried not to trip. Something was moving off to my right. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it crashing through the brush. Not like a person, too uncoordinated, but fast. It stopped when I stopped, moved when I moved. I didn't call out, didn't try the radio again. I knew it wouldn't work. I just kept going. I hit the fork near the end of the trail, almost missed it. My boot slipped, I went down hard, cracked my shoulder against a rock. Dropped the flashlight, it went rolling into the brush. As I scrambled for it, I heard it breathing, not slow, not steady, like it had lungs full of broken glass. Fast, ragged, way too close. I fumbled the flare gun out, rolled onto my back, and fired. The woods exploded in red light, and I saw it. It was tall, 7 feet at least. Its body looked like a person who hadn't eaten in a year. Bones sticking out at angles that didn't look right. The skin was dry, gray, stretched like parchment. Its head was long, too long, like an animal skull stretched vertically. No eyes, just 2 black pits. And these massive antlers? Like dead roots, twisted and cracked, growing from the sides of its head. It didn't move, just stood there, staring. Then its mouth opened, not like it was going to scream, more like it was tasting the air. Its teeth were all jagged, all different shapes and sizes, like they'd been shoved in there by someone who didn't know what teeth were supposed to look like. Then it jerked back into the trees. One single motion, gone. I ran. I didn't care how loud I was, or if I tripped again. I just ran. I didn't stop until I saw the lights from the ranger cabin through the trees. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the key in the door for a solid half-minute. When I finally got inside, I grabbed the radio. And of course, clear signal, perfect audio. I told them I'd seen something. Said it was big, possibly rabid, maybe injured. That it had followed me, aggressive. I left out what it looked like. I wasn't ready to sound like a lunatic on the report. The next morning, I went back out with Reynolds and Jay. No deer. No tracks, no smell, just clean trail like nothing ever happened. Reynolds didn't ask much, just looked at me and said, "Whatever's out there doesn't like people stepping off the path." That was all he said. Then we hiked back in silence. I don't take that loop anymore. Haven't since. I'll trade shifts, make excuses. I don't go off trail anymore. You probably shouldn't either. I'm Sarah, I'm 34 and work as a vet tech in Roanoke. When things get too loud in my head, or just in life, I hike. That's my therapy. Some people decompress with Netflix, some cook, others go out and drink. Me? I load up a backpack and disappear into the woods for a day or two. It's how I reset. I've been doing it for years, since college. Mostly the Blue Ridge area. I know most of the familiar trails by name. I've even found a few unofficial paths over time. Old fire roads, hunting routes, barely marked side trails. There's something really satisfying about following a forgotten path and ending up somewhere no one stood in years. So last October, I had a long weekend and decided to get in one last solo trip before the weather turned. I didn't want anything crowded. I'd had a rough couple of weeks and needed space, quiet, and maybe to cry into a camping mug without anyone asking if I was okay. I remembered this stretch of trail near Brushy Ridge, somewhere out past Dry Hollow, where the signage basically disappears. It's not technically closed, just neglected. My great-uncle used to talk about the area like it was cursed or something. He called it old land, said the maps got it wrong, and used to tell these half-creepy stories about watchers in the woods and a stone lady with a sharp hand. I always chalked it up to local folklore. Appalachia is full of that kind of stuff. Ghost stories, warnings, names you can't pronounce. As a kid, it scared me. As an adult, I mostly rolled my eyes. Anyway, I packed light but smart. Just enough food for 2 nights, water filter, first aid kit, knife, compass, my emergency beacon, the usual. I left Saturday morning and drove up to this maintenance road behind an abandoned gravel plant. It was barely a road. Overgrown, rutted out. I parked under a cluster of pines, shouldered my pack, and started hiking. It was perfect. Cool air, no bugs, not a soul in sight. Just me and the trail. I saw a couple of deer early on, and around noon, I spooked a black bear. It looked at me, decided I wasn't worth the trouble, and shuffled off. That was it. No other hikers, no planes overhead, just forest. I followed an unmarked trail for most of the afternoon, just a vague path in the brush, like someone dragged a stick through the leaves years ago. I was maybe 7 miles in when I found the site, nestled between two rock walls, almost like a natural alcove. There was an old fire ring there, mostly buried in moss, with black char still under the stones. It felt right. Secluded. Hidden. I set up my hammock between two thick trees, tied a tarp overhead, and gathered some wood. Dinner was rice and beans cooked on a little stove. Nothing fancy, but warm. I filtered water from a small stream nearby and made tea. By dusk, I was in my hammock with my Kindle, boots off, socks steaming near the coals. Then I heard it, humming, faint but clear, a few soft notes, female voice, slow, like a lullaby. I paused, listening. It stopped. I turned off my Kindle and sat there, holding my breath. The woods were quiet, not silent, just the usual background sounds. Breeze through the trees, a distant owl, crackling fire. I waited, nothing. I told myself it was just wind, or my own brain playing tricks. I even laughed once, out loud, like, okay, Sarah, nice imagination. I shook it off, got up, hung my food bag from a tree, and got ready for bed. Then, as I was climbing into the hammock, I saw movement. Left side of the clearing, maybe 25 feet out, just a shadow stepping behind a tree. No flashlight, no sound. I stared for maybe 10 seconds. Nothing emerged. Now, I've run into people in the woods before, mostly harmless, but it's always a little weird when you're alone. But this didn't feel like that. No hey there or sorry to bother you. Just a figure. Still. Watching. I didn't sleep. Every so often I heard something. Leaves crunching, one step at a time. Not animals. Animals don't move like that. It was too slow, too careful. I kept holding my breath, listening, waiting for it to get closer. It never did. Just kept circling the clearing. I didn't have the guts to call out again. By sunrise, I was already packed. Threw everything into my bag, left the food bag behind, and started moving. I didn't even make coffee. I just wanted distance. I was aiming south to loop back toward the road, but about an hour in, I realized I was off. The trail I'd followed the day before was gone. I kept checking my compass, but something didn't feel right. The terrain didn't match the map. I hit a stream I didn't recognize, and the flow was wrong. It went uphill. I'm not kidding. It was just slightly, but enough to notice. I pulled out my GPS. It flickered. Then the screen froze. Then nothing. Full battery, but dead. Then the humming started again, closer this time. Maybe 30 feet away, coming from behind a curtain of rhododendron. I couldn't see through it, but I didn't have to. I knew someone, or something, was standing behind it, humming like she was putting a baby to sleep. I started backing up. Slow, didn't say a word. Then I turned and power walked uphill, legs shaking, not daring to look over my shoulder. That's when I saw her. She stepped out from behind a tree like she'd been waiting there all morning. Tall, thin, barefoot, skin the color of wet stone, dry and cracked at the joints. Her face didn't move. No blinking, no breathing. Just these flat, wide eyes and a frozen mouth that didn't quite sit right on her face. Her right arm dangled at her side. Her left was behind her. I stopped dead. Not because I wanted to, but because my body did. Like it had locked up on its own. I managed to say something like, "Hey, sorry, just hiking through," real casual, trying not to sound freaked out. No reaction. I stepped sideways, keeping my eyes on the ground, trying to create space. Looked up again. She was closer. 10 feet, tops. Then her head tilted, not curiosity, more like a hawk eyeing something it was about to snatch. Her left arm came forward. And that's when I saw it. Not a hint, a blade. It was part of her. Long, curved, dull gray. Not quite bone, not quite metal, like it had grown out of her wrist. She didn't swing it, just raised it slightly and hummed. Same tune, same rhythm, only now she was smiling, but her lips didn't move. The corners of her mouth just lifted, nothing else changed. I bolted, barely dropped my pack. Didn't even look, just ran downhill. Branches tore my shirt, my face got slashed by a bramble. I tripped 3 times, but didn't stop. I didn't hear her behind me, but I felt her there. Like gravity had shifted and I was running through her pull. I stumbled into a clearing with the remnants of a ranger station, just a rotting floor and some rusted beams. I dropped to the ground and slid under the old base, flattening myself into the dirt. She walked past, didn't rush, didn't call out, just walked. I saw her feet, bare, cracked, nails long and black like claws. Her blade hand dragged against the wall, making this slow, scraping hiss that set my teeth on edge. She kept humming, louder now, searching, but not in a way that suggested she was lost. It was like she already knew I was there. Then she stopped, just for a second, silence, and then she moved on. I stayed there, pressed into the dirt until my arms went numb. I think it was 3 hours, maybe more. When I finally crawled out, I didn't feel relief, just cold. I walked non-stop. No water, no food, just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. I reached a road the next evening and flagged down a pickup. The guy didn't ask questions. He gave me a bottle of water and drove me 20 miles to a gas station. I charged my phone and called my great uncle. When I told him what I saw, he was quiet. Then he said, real calm, that was the stone woman. We called her Spearfinger. She eats livers. I laughed. Nervous habit. He didn't laugh with me. I haven't hiked alone since. Don't plan to. My name's Zach, and I do survey work for mining companies, mostly across West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. It's not glamorous. Lots of drone flights, GIS mapping, environmental reports. I'm usually at a desk staring at topography data or aerial photos. But now and then, I get sent out to the middle of nowhere to put actual eyes on things. Usually it's just overgrown shafts or long-abandoned tunnels that no one's cared about in decades. 2 years ago, though, I got sent to a site near a place called Corbin Ridge. That one didn't go like the others. The company I work for had acquired a chunk of old mining land from the state, mostly paperwork stuff, but one section, Shaft 12, from an operation called Devil's Hollow, had no GPS records, no solid maps, nothing. Just a vague note that it had been abandoned in '65. I was told to hike in, snap photos, log the coordinates, and check if there were any visible cave-ins, erosion, or signs of squatters. Should have been a routine job. Getting there was half the battle. The service road was barely a road, just gravel, tight turns, weeds growing up through it like nature was trying to reclaim it. I had to creep along at 10 miles an hour or my tires would have gone off the edge. Closest person who knew the area was an old foreman named Hank. Retired, 84 years old, used to work Devil's Hollow back in the day, wore overalls, smelled like pipe smoke, and had a stare like he knew something you didn't want to know. He agreed to show me where the old access trail was, just pointed me to a gap in the limestone and said, real slow, don't go inside. And if you hear anything, turn around. Don't answer it. I smiled, thanked him, figured he was just being an old-timer with stories. You hear things like that in this line of work. Ghost stories, rumors, guys falling for practical jokes. I wasn't new. The trail wasn't marked at all. No signposts, no obvious path, You had to duck through a narrow split in the rocks and hike along a ridge that overlooked a dry wash. Kind of pretty, honestly, if you ignored the silence. After maybe 15 or 20 minutes, I found the shaft. It looked like a big black mouth in the hillside, not sealed. Just some old rusted rebar across the opening, bent into a crude barrier. The welds looked like they'd been done with equipment from the 50s, weak and flaking. I didn't want to test how much pressure they could take. I started doing what I was sent for, marked the GPS point, took a bunch of photos from different angles. There was visible erosion in the slope above it, and a few old support beams were sticking out like snapped twigs. The place looked like it had started collapsing decades ago and just kept going, little by little. Then, as I was kneeling to write something in my notebook, I heard it. 3 sharp knocks. Not echoes, not creaks. Metal on stone, somewhere inside the shaft. And I went still. It came again, same rhythm, 3 hits, steady, like someone working a chisel into a wall. I lowered my notebook and crouched, looking through the gaps in the rebar. Total blackness inside. Couldn't see more than 5 feet in, but I could smell it. Rust, coal dust, and something else. Like burnt oil, maybe. The tunnel had clearly collapsed just a little ways in, but the sound wasn't coming from there. It came from deeper. I waited a few seconds. Nothing. I straightened up and turned to leave. Then it hit again, a 4th strike. Louder, heavier, like a sledgehammer landing square on a steel plate. It made my ribs buzz. That was enough. I left. Walked fast, didn't look back. At the truck, I told my boss the shaft was unstable. Didn't mention the noise. I was still trying to convince myself it was nothing. Old metal settling maybe. Rocks falling. The next day, I went back. Brought a small camera, tripod, and light rig. I didn't tell anyone I was returning. Honestly, I didn't want them asking why. I told myself I was being thorough. I stepped inside just far enough to be past the bars, maybe 5 feet. The air in there was cold, drier than outside, had that dead stillness to it, like the whole place had been vacuum sealed. I set the tripod, adjusted the focus, got the angle aimed toward the collapse. Then it started again, hammering. Faster this time, no rhythm, just frantic pounding from deep inside the shaft. I froze. My hands were still on the camera, but my fingers weren't moving. Then breathing. Right behind me. Slow, wet, like air being pulled through a throat full of gravel. I spun around. Nothing. I didn't even pack up. Just grabbed the whole setup and backed out. Made it to the road in record time. That night, I watched the footage. About 3 minutes in, the light catches something. Behind the collapse, way in the shadows, a shape. Tall, slightly hunched. Looks like part of the rock until it shifts. Just enough to show it's standing, like it's bracing itself. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. 2 days later, the company asked me to accompany an environmental inspector. She was scheduled to test water samples for runoff contamination. We were to meet near the same trail and hike up together. Her name was Elise, mid-30s, sharp eyes, didn't say much beyond what she needed to. I didn't bring up what I saw. On the way up, she asked about the mine. I gave her the condensed version. Operational from the early 30s until it was shut down in 65. Bunch of equipment malfunctions and one collapse that trapped 4 men. Bodies never recovered. Story goes, the owner sealed it shortly after that and left it. She gave me a side glance. Sounds haunted. I shrugged. Just cursed. When we got to the shaft, we both stopped. The rebar had been bent outward, not snapped, not broken from rust, bent, like something inside had pressed against it until it gave. She looked at me and asked, "Did you do that?" I shook my head. We stood there for a minute. Neither of us wanted to be the first to step closer. Then she said she'd head down to the creek bed and start testing. I said I'd stay behind and get video. I took out my phone and started filming, just doing a slow sweep of the shaft. That's when I heard the voice. It wasn't distant, it wasn't faint. It came from maybe 10 feet inside, raspy, Calm, keep working. My hand went numb. The phone slipped. Hit the ground, screen first. I turned and ran. Didn't check the footage. Didn't say a word until I saw Elise climbing back up. I just said, "We're leaving." She didn't argue. Back in the truck, neither of us spoke. I dropped her off and drove home on autopilot. That night, she texted me, said her audio recorder caught the voice, same words, same voice. Asked me if I thought someone could have been down there. I didn't reply for a while. Then I said, "No. I know no one was." A week later, they sent a welding crew to seal the shaft for good. Weld the bars shut, pour concrete, everything. I wasn't involved. Didn't ask to be. One of the guys from the crew, Chris, called me after. He asked if I'd ever seen anyone up there wearing old miner gear. I said no. He told me one of the welders froze halfway through. Said he saw a man in the tunnel, just standing there behind the rockfall, wearing a busted helmet, face caked in soot, watching them. Not moving. Truder said he smiled once, then stepped backward into the dark. Chris checked. Didn't see anyone. They finished the job and left. No one's been back. I thought that was the end of it. Months later, I got something in the mail. No return address, no note, just a manila envelope. Inside was an old photo, black and white. 5 men standing in a mine shaft, all wearing helmets, faces covered in dirt. I flipped it over. 4 names written in faded pencil. Same 4 from the 1965 accident report. And one more name, written in darker ink. No one knew I was there. No one should have had that photo. I keep it locked in my desk now. I don't take jobs near Corbin anymore. I don't go near abandoned shafts. My name's Kevin. I'm 31. Until last year, I worked trail maintenance out in the Monongahela National Forest. It wasn't just a job to me. I spent enough time out there to learn the place like a second home. Every trail bend, every hidden game path, every spot where tourists left beer cans, or where bears scratched trees. I could walk most of it blindfolded. You get to a point where your brain learns what's normal in the woods. You stop jumping at every rustle or bird call. You just know when something's off. This one trip, last August, messed all that up. I was fixing a bent trail sign near one of the access points when dispatch radioed in. Missing hiker. Guy named Ray Garvey, mid-30s, car parked near a pull-off at Smoke Cabin Hollow. His sister hadn't heard from him in 2 days. According to the logbook, he'd written 2-night solo on his way in. I headed out with Logan. He was a few years older than me, had been with the service longer. We didn't talk much, especially not about Smoke Cabin Hollow. Everyone on the team had a weird story from that part of the forest. Not like ghost stories around the campfire, weird. Just bad energy. Radios stopped working, batteries died early, roadkill piled up near the curves. We avoided it when we could, but Ray's car was still there. Clean, tires cool, no scratches or signs of forced entry, windows spotless. Trail log matched his sister's timeline. Looked like a pretty standard backcountry hiker, nothing out of place. Yet, we started tracking, saw his boot prints pretty quick. Looked like size 12 Vibrams, deep, even strides, no sign of stumbling or panic. Guy seemed experienced, confident, moving with purpose. 4 miles in, we found his camp. There was a fire pit, the logs were only half burned like they hadn't caught properly. One was cracked straight down the middle. Hard, clean, like it had been split with something heavy. No ashes, no food scraps, just 2 vacuum-sealed packs of meat still sitting next to the fire, unopened, not even moved from their packaging. It looked like he just stopped what he was doing and walked off. Then we saw the ground. 2 deep grooves had been carved into the dirt, running away from the camp. Parallel lines, maybe 4 inches deep, spaced a couple feet apart. Not from boots, not from dragging a cooler or tent. The shape wasn't right. It was as if something had either dragged itself or something else down the slope. We followed the marks about 100 yards downhill until the land dropped sharply into a thick, overgrown gully. The grooves vanished into the underbrush, just stopped. No signs of torn clothing, no blood, no tracks. We stood there, staring at that brush line, not saying a word. Eventually, Logan reached for a flag and tied it to a tree limb. That was our marker. We didn't go any farther that day. Later that night, I called Ray's emergency contact. His sister Jen picked up. She was calm, matter-of-fact. Told me Ray had a thing for Appalachian folklore. Cryptids, ghosts, haunted spots. The kind of stuff people usually laugh about after a couple beers. I asked if he'd mentioned any specific destination. She said yeah, he'd told her he was heading out to look for something called the White Thing. I swear, I actually sat back in my chair when she said it. That's one of those names that floats around the region, the White Thing. Sheep squatch, whatever people want to call it, you'll hear it described as this big, hulking, white-furred creature, goat-like horns, stinks like ammonia, walks on two legs, supposed to scream like a woman and smell like a urinal doused in bleach. I'd heard the stories, just like everybody else. Thought it was a bear with mange or drunk guys seeing shadows and wanting a story to scare their friends with. The next morning, we brought in Mason, a tracker, and his dog Thor. Big German Shepherd, great nose, well-trained. We were back at the site before 9. Before Mason even got Thor fully leashed, the dog bolted into the brush, nose to the ground, tail high, totally focused. We chased him as best we could. The trail sloped harder than I remembered, and the air felt weird. Not heavy, not cold, just dead. No bird sounds, no insects, not even wind in the trees. That silence hit all three of us at the same time. Thor suddenly stopped about 20 feet ahead, crouched down with his ears flat and tail tucked under. Then he just lay down on the dirt. Bebosh. Then the smell hit us. It wasn't rot. It wasn't roadkill or something naturally dead. It was sharp, chemical like old fur and bleach, like something trying to cover up a worse smell with ammonia. Mason muttered, "Dead animal," but I could see in his face that he didn't believe it either. We stepped into a shallow clearing. There was a crater in the center like something had slammed into the dirt from above. Scattered in the middle were a torn flannel shirt, a sock, and a single hiking boot. No blood. No drag marks, just those items, lying neatly like they'd been placed there. Then we noticed the tracks, hooves, but not deer. Too wide, too deep. Some of them were close together, like it had been walking. Others were spaced 4 feet apart, like it had been leaping. One print was crushed so far down it had pushed pebbles into the soil like clay. I knelt beside one and stared. My eyes started playing tricks on me. That's when Logan tapped my arm. He pointed ahead. Something stood between 2 trees, 30 feet out. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, covered in dirty white fur, hanging in wet-looking clumps. 2 horns curved back from its skull. Its limbs were long, arms too long, and it stood upright, but not like a person. Its stance was off, twisted. Its head kept twitching, like it couldn't stay still, and the eyes, pitch black. No light, no blink, just 2 holes staring back at us. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. We were frozen. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed. Mason slowly reached for his radio. That's when Thor snapped. The dog yelped and bolted back up the trail like his life depended on it. That must have broken the moment because the thing moved too, just not toward us. It lunged sideways into the trees, not ran, launched, like a car crash. Trees cracked as it tore through them. Branches snapped like toothpicks. Then, silence again. We turned and followed the dog, didn't say a word. Caught up with him halfway back to the truck. Drove the rest of the way in silence. I've never heard Logan so quiet. That night, I sat down to write my report. I only included what we found before the tracks. Mason did the same. We left everything else out. Ray was marked as missing, presumed dead. Search crews went over the area for days. They never found anything. No bag, no tent, no body. A few weeks later, I drove back to Smoke Cabin Hollow alone. I don't really know why. Curiosity maybe, or just needing to see it one more time. I parked in the same spot, walked the same trail. As I neared the gully, I noticed the quiet again. That same dead air. No motion, no sounds. At the edge, I stopped. On the trail below, someone had arranged a ring of stones. Perfect circle. Sitting in the middle was a single boot. Not Ray's. It was smaller, different sole. Inside it was a scrap of blue denim, bunched up like stuffing. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then I turned around and walked straight back to my truck. Didn't touch anything. Didn't look back. I'm 25, and I've never lived anywhere except Huxley, this tiny speck of a town buried in the Appalachian hills. You'd miss it if you blinked. We've got one gas station, a post office that closes at 3, and a diner where the coffee tastes like burnt paper. People here either stay forever or leave and never come back. There's not much in between. Growing up here, you learn a few unspoken rules early on. People wave when they drive past, even if they don't know you. You always hold the door for the elderly, and you never leave your trash out overnight unless you want raccoons or worse. And no one locks their doors during the day. But once the sun dips behind the ridge, you lock up tight. Not because of crime. Nothing really happens here. It's because of the woods. My dad used to say the ridge sees everything. He'd say it while taking off his boots or spooning out beans from a can. Never dramatic, never as a warning, just like it was a fact. Same as saying the sky's blue or water's wet. I didn't think much of it as a kid. But older folks around here, they've got stories. Weird ones. Some say they saw lights darting through the trees at night. Others swear they heard someone calling their name in their own voice. Never anything on record, never any evidence. But the stories stick. You grow up with that stuff, and even if you don't believe it, it becomes part of you, like wallpaper you stop noticing. I run the auto shop just off County Road 9. My uncle left it to me after he passed, along with a half-dead vending machine and a stack of old invoices from the 90s. Mostly I work alone, though I've got a part-timer named Dylan who sweeps, answers the phone sometimes, and pretends he's not smoking behind the building when he thinks I'm busy. Most of what I do is routine. Mud cake trucks from the hills, busted suspensions, rusted exhausts. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. Then the Bronco showed up. It was mid-September. Still felt like summer during the day, but you'd wake up in the morning and see your breath if you were out early enough. This guy pulls up, mid-30s maybe? Hard to tell. He looked rough, clothes torn in places that didn't look like work damage, eyes wide and jumpy, like he was wired or just saw something he couldn't process. He kept licking his lips and glancing behind him. He said he'd been camping up near Barlow Ridge, about 30 miles northeast of town, and had to force his way out over a ditch. Claimed he hit something, but when I asked what, he clammed up, just shook his head real fast, like trying to shake off the memory. I asked if he was okay, and he nodded way too fast, like his mouth couldn't keep up with whatever was happening in his brain. The Bronco was trashed. I mean, really torn up. Mud jammed into every crevice of the undercarriage, entire front end crumpled like a soda can. Deep gouges down both doors, not scratches, gouges, like something had dug into the metal, and wide too, way wider than a bear claw. I've seen trucks mangled by crashes, terrain, even a moose once. But this looked different, more violent, precise. He didn't ask for an estimate, didn't care how long it would take, just tossed the keys on the counter and said, "Keep it as long as you need," then walked off like he was late for something. Didn't leave a number, didn't ask for a ride, just disappeared down the road on foot. I figured he was staying at the Hilltop Inn, but I never saw him again. Not once. 2 weeks later, 2 deputies from the county sheriff's office showed up. Big guys, serious faces. Asked if I'd seen a dark green Bronco come through. I said yeah and walked them out back to where it was parked. They took one look and asked about the driver. I gave them what I could. Tallish, dark hair, pale, twitchy, talked like he was being chased. They jotted it down and thanked me. That was it. No follow-up, no questions about payment or pickup, like they were checking a box and moving on. That's when it really started bothering me. I couldn't stop thinking about the marks on that truck. I've seen rough damage, but those claw marks, they were symmetrical, like a hand had done it, a big one. And the guy, it wasn't the crash that rattled him. He looked like he'd already survived the bad part and was waiting for the next hit. I tried to let it go, but I'd find myself walking past the Bronco and stopping, just staring, measuring the scratches with my eyes. Too neat for a slide, too wide for any animal we've got around here. They looked like fingers, long ones. Then one Friday night, after I locked up, I had a few beers and made the worst decision of my life. Told myself it was curiosity. It wasn't. It was compulsion. I packed up a flashlight, my .38 revolver, and a little cooler with water and jerky, scribbled a note that said, "Checking Barlow Ridge, back tomorrow," and stuck it on the counter. Didn't call anyone, didn't post, just drove. The road out there starts off paved, then turns to gravel, then dirt. The deeper in you go, the more the trees crowd you, like they don't want you there. I drove until I couldn't anymore, then got out and walked. It was dead quiet, no birds, no wind, not even leaves rustling, just the sound of my own boots crunching old pine needles. I followed what looked like an old game trail. It forked a few times, but I kept to the center one. Don't know why, just felt like the right call. After about half an hour, I found what I think was the campsite. It didn't look abandoned, it looked wiped. Tent collapsed, poles bent like someone fell on them hard. Tarp half folded, like someone started packing but got interrupted. Fire pit had ash in it, but no wood, no burn marks. Like someone dumped it there to fake it. Then I saw the footprints. They were barefoot. Big, flat, toes spread wider than a normal person's. Not one set, two, maybe more. They circled the tent, walked right up to the tarp, then vanished into the brush. One set ended 5 feet from where I was standing, deep, like whoever made them was pressing down too hard, or weighed more than they should. Then I heard it, a sharp crack, like a tree snapping in half, clean and close. Not wind, not a branch falling, a trunk breaking. I froze. My hand went to my gun. I turned and clicked on the flashlight. Nothing. Then another crack, closer. Then the breathing started. Heavy, wet, uneven, like someone had run for miles on lungs full of tar. I swung the light around and caught a flash of something pale, ducking behind a tree. I stepped forward. It did too. Same pace, same direction. I aimed the beam higher and finally saw it. It was tall, at least 7 feet. Skin stretched tight across bone. Not white, not gray, almost see-through. I could see bones under the skin. Arms too long with elbows that bent the wrong way. Eyes too far apart, no nose. Just a slit where the mouth was. It opened that mouth and let out this sound. Not a roar, not a growl, just this awful moan, like someone dragging metal across concrete, and there was rhythm to it. Like it was trying to say something. I pulled the trigger twice. Hit center mass both times. It didn't even flinch. It tilted its head like it was studying me. Then it folded backward into the trees. No sound, no footprints, just gone. Didn't wait. I ran. Full sprint, flashlight bouncing, shadows flying in every direction. Didn't stop until I hit the truck, slammed the door, and tore out of there. I didn't look back. Didn't breathe until I saw the first porch light in town. Next morning, I went through the intake logs. No name, no phone, nothing for that guy. Just a sticky note that said, Barlow Ridge, rear axle. I asked Jess, who works up front sometimes, if she remembered him. She looked confused, said we didn't have any customers that day. I checked the security footage. That day's file was just gone, deleted. The Bronco's still out back, and every few nights, the motion lights out there turn on, one at a time, like something's walking past. I used to check the cameras. There's never anything there, but I know better. I'm 35 and I'm a wildlife biologist. I've been doing this kind of work for about 10 years, mostly on contracts with the Department of Natural Resources. I'm usually the one they send when the job involves steep climbs, rough terrain, or places you can't really get to unless you're okay being alone for a while. That's most of my work. Hiking into remote parts of the eastern Appalachians, logging signs of animal activity, setting trail cameras, checking them, collecting scat samples. Stuff nobody really wants to do, but someone has to. It's quiet work, solitary, which suits me fine. This happened a few winters back. I got assigned to Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia. Deep backcountry stretch. They'd had some reports of strange predator activity. Nothing dramatic, just some odd changes in movement patterns. The kind of thing that doesn't raise alarms but still gets flagged. I was supposed to survey a 10-square-mile area over 4 days. Alone. I'd done dozens of these by then. I didn't even think twice about it. They had a service cabin for me, tucked about 12 miles off the access road, not much to it. A single room with a cot, a propane heater, a table, and not a lot else. I carried in what I needed: freeze-dried meals, my laptop for field logs, 8 trail cameras, batteries, and extra memory cards. No phone service out there, but the laptop had a satellite uplink for uploading tagged data. The first day went fine. I got up before sunrise, packed my gear, and started placing cameras in the field. I move fast. I've learned how to read the land pretty well by now, and this place didn't feel any different. Deer tracks, fox prints, bobcats scat, normal wildlife traffic. One of the cameras I placed near a narrow stream bed where I found clear signs of regular crossings. That one felt promising. It wasn't until I got back to the cabin around dusk that something felt off. I can't even explain what changed. Just this low-key uneasiness that crept in the second I shut the door behind me. I ate, updated my logs, and tried to sleep. By 10:30, I was zipped into my sleeping bag, listening to the faint click of the heater. Around 2:00 a.m., I woke up. No dream, no noise inside the cabin. Just a sound outside. Tapping, not scratching, not an animal thumping around. This was 5 or 6 slow, measured taps right under the window, next to where I was sleeping. Then a pause, then the same rhythm again. I didn't move, just sat up and listened. It wasn't windy. The tapping didn't match anything you'd expect from a branch or wildlife. It came again, same pattern, same spot. I didn't have a gun on me, just a can of bear spray and a folding knife I kept clipped to my belt. I stayed frozen for 20 minutes, maybe more, just listening. Eventually it stopped. I think I nodded off again just before dawn, but it wasn't good sleep. The next morning, I got up and checked around the cabin. The ground was dry, snow had melted the week before, and there weren't any clear signs of tracks. Nothing out of place. The only prints I could find were on the opposite side of the cabin, a few squirrel tracks near the firewood stack. I didn't report it, just made a quick note in my personal log and kept going. Day 2, I pushed out farther, about 6 miles northwest, near the ridge. That's where I found the first strange thing. A ring of stones, almost perfectly circular. The rocks were stacked in pairs, evenly spaced, 8 feet across. Inside, a scatter of bones. Some looked burned, others still had dried sinew on them. Right in the center was a coyote skull. Clean and bright, like someone had scrubbed it. It didn't look like anything natural. It was too symmetrical, too intentional. But there weren't any other signs of people, no fire pits, no gear, no trash, nothing. I took photos and GPS tagged the location. Back at the cabin, I uploaded everything and flagged the log entry for priority review. That night, I bolted the window and locked the cabin door. I kept the bear spray within reach. Didn't even bother trying to sleep deeply. I was already awake when the tapping came back. A little after 2:00 a.m. Same window, same pattern, but this time it was louder, more pressure behind it. Not violent, just confident. I moved to the window and crouched low, pulled the curtain back, just a crack. There was nothing outside. And then the tapping started again, from the back wall this time. I froze. I didn't move, barely even breathed. Nothing else happened. The tapping stopped. I sat against the far wall until daylight. That morning, I made the call to end the survey early. I had enough log to justify an early exit under the potential wildlife threat clause in my contract. It's flexible, as long as you file it right. No one argued. I packed my gear and hiked out, collecting cameras on the way. Most had captured normal activity. Deer, raccoons, a fox on one. But 2 of the memory cards, completely blank. Not even a system file, like they'd been wiped. The card from the stream cam still had data. I tucked it into a separate pouch, but didn't check the footage. I just wanted to get out. 2 miles from the road, I saw another stone ring. Bigger this time, maybe 10 feet wide, and inside, bones again. Only this time they weren't animal. You don't mistake a human femur or rib cage when you've studied skeletons in the field for years. I didn't stop to check further, just marked the GPS location and kept moving. I hit the road by late afternoon and drove straight to the ranger station. I handed everything over, photos, notes, GPS data, even the corrupted cards. Told them I wasn't going back. 2 days later, I finally opened the footage from the stream cam. It started normal. Deer crossing, a raccoon sniffing around. Then at exactly 2:07 a.m., something stepped into view. It was tall, thin, the limbs were too long, the joints looked off, bent slightly wrong. The skin was pale, almost gray. It moved slowly with this weird, swaying gait. I assumed it was a person in a suit at first, a prank or some freak. Then it turned toward the camera. The face was all wrong. The eyes were in the right place, but the nose and mouth looked distorted, like someone had tried to sculpt a human face from memory and missed a few key details. It leaned in until its face nearly touched the lens, and then it opened its mouth. No sound came out, but the video glitched. Just for a second, then the footage froze. The rest of the card refused to play. I tried multiple readers. Same result. That night, I set up security cameras around my place, put one over each window, just in case. A week later, I got an email from a woman named Claire. She said she worked in forensics for the department and confirmed that some of the bones I'd found were human. Said local law enforcement and federal teams were involved now. Then she asked me a strange question. Had I ever heard of something called the Whistler? I hadn't. She said it was a legend from the region. Some kind of old story locals tell about a thing that imitates sounds. Footsteps, tapping, voices, whistles. Said once it gets your attention, it keeps following you. Then she backtracked. Said it was probably just a squatter. Told me not to read too much into the folklore. 2 days after that, I got a box in the mail, no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a sticky note that read, "Second copy. Do not show anyone." I plugged it in. It was night vision footage, time-stamped 2 weeks before my trip. The camera showed the inside of a different ranger cabin. A guy sat at the table working on paperwork, or maybe logging something. Then the tapping started. He stood up, looked toward the window, walked to the door. A hand pressed against the glass, long, with too many knuckles. The door creaked. He stepped back. The camera jolted like it was knocked over. And then, the last frame, a face. Mouth stretched open, no teeth, just blackness. Then static. I deleted Claire's email the next morning and bought blackout curtains for every window in my place. I'm a land surveyor based in eastern Tennessee. Most days my work is pretty straightforward, measuring property lines, checking elevations, and ensuring everything aligns with legal descriptions. But occasionally I get assignments that take me deep into the mountains, places where the GPS signal fades and even Google Maps throws up its hands. This particular job was one of those. A client had purchased a parcel of land up near the Kentucky border, nestled in a hollow that seemed forgotten by time. The deed was ancient, dating back to the late 1800s, and he wanted the boundaries confirmed before building a cabin. I'd surveyed in the region before, but this hollow didn't ring any bells. The access road was more of a suggestion than a path. Gravel, half washed out, with dense pine and ash trees pressing in from both sides. I drove my truck as far as I could, then loaded up my gear and hiked in. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to close around me. No trail markers, no fences, no signs of human activity. Just unbroken woods. I set up my equipment near a dry creek bed that I estimated marked the southern edge of the property. My plan was to work clockwise and finish before sunset. The air was unnervingly still. No bird song, no rustling leaves, just silence. It was as if the forest was holding its breath. About an hour in, while marking a point near a split oak, I noticed something unusual. Stacked stones. Not the typical cairns hikers leave behind. These were flatter, arranged almost like the foundation of a wall, but only a foot high. I assumed it was the remnants of an old homestead, which isn't uncommon in these parts. I made a mental note and moved on. At the northwest corner, I came across a wooden post, blackened with age. Tied around the top was a circle of braided animal hair, maybe horse or goat. It swayed slightly, even though there was no breeze. Carved into the post was a symbol, 3 overlapping circles inside a triangle. I took a photo out of curiosity. The moment I did, I heard a snap behind me. A branch breaking. I turned quickly, expecting to see a deer or some other animal, but there was nothing. No movement, no sound. I looked at the photo on my phone. The symbol was blurred, distorted like a heat wave, while the rest of the image was clear. I pocketed the phone and continued. In hindsight, I should have turned back. The eastern edge of the property sloped down sharply. I had to traverse it sideways, gripping roots to keep my balance. Halfway through, a foul smell hit me, like rotting meat. Then I heard footsteps ahead, slow and deliberate, crunching leaves. "Hey," I called out. "I'm a surveyor, just working the property line." No response. The footsteps stopped. I moved forward cautiously and saw a figure about 20 yards away. At first, I thought it was a man standing still, back to me, just beyond the trees. Then he crouched, suddenly and unnaturally, and sprang back up. I took a step back. He did it again, lower this time, as if mimicking an animal, but not quite getting it right. I turned and scrambled back up the ridge, slipping and banging my knee, but not stopping until I reached the top. He was gone. I made my way back to the creek bed where my gear was still lying. I grabbed what I could and started heading out. The light was fading, and I hadn't brought a flashlight. I was about 30 minutes from my truck. As I hiked, I heard movement behind me again. This time, it followed me, always just far enough to stay out of sight. When I stopped, it stopped. When I moved, it started again. I didn't call out this time, I just moved faster. About a quarter mile out, I passed the stone stacks again, but there were more now, at least 6, lined perfectly along the left side of the trail. I didn't pause, just kept walking. Then I heard it. A voice, my voice. It came from behind me just off the trail. "Hey, I'm a surveyor, just working the property line." Same words, same tone. I turned and saw nothing. I broke into a run. Branches tore at my arms, roots caught my boots, but I didn't stop. The trail twisted and I lost the markers. Everything looked the same in every direction. I found myself back at the post, the one with the hair ring. But it was different now. The post looked freshly carved and the hair was wet, dripping something dark onto the soil. I backed away and heard my voice again, closer. "Hey, I'm a surveyor." It was behind the trees, circling. Then it came from the left. "Hey," then the right. "Surveyor." I bolted, crashing through brush, not caring where I went. I broke through a thicket and saw something ahead. My truck, just barely visible through the trees. I didn't stop running. I hit the gravel, unlocked the door, and slammed it behind me. As I started the engine, I looked in the mirror. Someone was standing in the tree line, same height as me, same build, but it didn't move, just watched. I didn't go back for the rest of the gear. Didn't finish the job. When the client called to ask why the report was incomplete, I said there were boundary discrepancies, that I couldn't access the full property due to terrain. I tried to delete the photo with the symbol. Or I tried. It wouldn't erase. Every time I opened my gallery, it was there, blurry, distorted, like it had taken root. A week later, I got a voicemail from a blocked number. No one spoke, but I recognized the background noise. Dead silence, just like in that hollow. My name's Mark, and this happened when I was 21. I was in my third year of a forestry program, the kind where you spend half your time in lectures and the other half wading through mud and dodging thorn bushes. That semester, they started a new initiative with the state parks to update trail data for the underused zones. Basically places nobody hikes unless they're lost or very determined. I volunteered. It seemed easy enough. I'd get to skip a few labs, test out a new GPS unit, and spend a day in the woods without having to deal with group assignments or packed shuttle buses. They gave me a topo map with some suggested boundaries and a brand new GPS device, still in the packaging. My professor said to log terrain shifts, deadfall, trail conditions, anything weird or worth noting. As long as I stuck to public land, I could choose my route. I picked a spot on the edge of Greenstone National Forest, where the old map still showed trails that hadn't been updated in years. Looked like it hadn't been touched much in at least a decade. I planned a 6-hour loop, packed 2 granola bars, a big water bottle, compass, and the paper map. I marked some GPS points in advance. Just a rough loop that'd take me through a mix of old trail and whatever was left of it. If I kept a decent pace, I'd be back before dark. I didn't tell anyone the specifics. Just said I was doing mapping work east of campus. That was normal for me. I liked being out there alone. Always felt like I could think better without people around. I parked just off an old gravel access road, past a rusted gate that hadn't been closed in years. The start of the trail still had some recognizable shape to it. Packed dirt, faded blazes on the trees. But about an hour in, it started to fade. Expected that. Deer paths took over, winding around thickets and sharp drop-offs. I followed the terrain down into a dense patch of mountain laurel and ended up in this weird flat zone. No sound, not even wind or bugs, just still. That's when I heard it. Mark, it was right behind me. Calm and casual, like someone asking a question in a study group. I turned around immediately. I don't scare easily, but that was sharp. I half expected to see another student or a ranger, but there was no one. Just trees and brush, not even a branch moving. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing, not even an echo. I stood still for maybe 30 seconds, turning slowly to check all angles. Woods like that, sound plays tricks. It could have been an echo or a hunter nearby, but I hadn't seen a single footprint or disturbed patch since I'd started. I figured I'd imagined it, and I kept going. Picked up my pace a bit. 5 minutes later, same voice, Mark, same exact tone, same distance behind me. That calm, questioning vibe. Only this time, I hadn't stopped moving. And I'd covered enough ground that if someone was following, I should have heard them crashing through brush. But there was no sound other than my own boots. I didn't respond that time. I just walked faster. I kept checking behind me, casually at first, then more often. About 10 minutes later, it came again. But it was closer this time. Not by much, but enough that I stopped walking completely. The voice didn't belong to anyone I knew, but the way it said my name, something about the rhythm, made my stomach twist a little. It was flat, like it was reading it from a screen. I didn't say a word, just pressed the GPS marker button and moved on. 15 minutes passed. I kept to the slope, trying to follow an old drainage line. The undergrowth thickened and I had to duck branches and sidestep fallen logs. I thought I was past it. Then it came again. "Mart, you okay?" That one stopped me cold. Not because of the words, but the voice. It was my mom's voice, down to the exact pitch. The way she says it when I haven't called in too long. I hadn't spoken to her that week. She didn't know where I was. No one did. I just stood there. My throat went dry. I didn't even want to turn around. Then it said it again, identical. "Mark, you okay?" Same words, same tone, but this time it sounded wrong, like a cassette tape replayed with just a tiny glitch. It didn't sound like concern. It sounded like a recording of concern. I kept moving. Didn't even check my bearings, just aimed toward the western ridge. I remembered marking a service road that cut across the slope, maybe half a mile away. If I got there, I figured I could make better time and maybe find another way back. But every few minutes the voice came again, sometimes from the left, sometimes right behind me. It never got closer, never got further, just hovered around the edges. "Mark, then come back, Mark." That one hit hard. It was Lena's voice, my girlfriend at the time. The night before, we'd had a fight about me heading out solo again. She'd said exactly that. "Come back, Mark," when I walked out. No anger, just tired worry. But she didn't know my route. No one did. The voice didn't even shift tone, just replayed her words perfectly, like someone using her voice as a soundbite. I kept walking. Not running yet, but my stride was fast and uneven. Branches scraped my arms. At some point, I realized I'd dropped my notebook. Didn't even think about going back. Then it changed again. "Don't leave yet." Totally different voice, not familiar, slower, lower. Each word spaced a little too far apart. Then silence. Then the mom voice again. "Mark, you okay?" But it was worse this time. It emphasized the wrong part. "You okay?" Like someone unfamiliar with the meaning was just guessing the tone. That's when I ran. No more pacing, I just bolted. The terrain dropped, and I skidded along a washed-out stream bed. My boots slipped on wet leaves. I fell once, scraped my hand open on a rock, and kept going. The voice said one more thing, right as I rounded a boulder. "Mark, stop." Not a request, a command. I didn't even think. I ran until I couldn't hear anything behind me. I followed a deer trail that cut west, downhill, until I saw something nailed to a tree. An old diamond trail blaze. Faded red. It was official. Not on my map, but I knew what it meant. I was back in maintained territory. I followed it, didn't stop, didn't look back. Eventually, I saw the ranger station. Just a boxy building with metal shutters and a tall antenna. I ran straight to it, banged on the door like a maniac. A young guy opened it, maybe 25, in a green field jacket, and just blinked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I held out the GPS. Couldn't even answer at first. My voice cracked when I said, "Can you check where I just came from?" He brought me inside, plugged it into his laptop. After a second, his eyes narrowed. "You were in Zone D9?" He tapped the screen. "That area's been off limits since 2010. Flood wiped the whole trail system out. No maintenance, nothing marked. You were at least 5 miles past the last recorded post." I asked if anyone had been out there recently. He didn't answer, just stared at the map a bit longer, then said, "You're lucky you came back the same way you went in." I sat in the corner of that office for an hour, drank half a gallon of water, and stared at my boots. When I left, I didn't say much. I just got in my car and drove the whole way back to campus without the radio on. Didn't even notice it was getting dark. 3 days later, I got a voicemail. No number, just 30 seconds of total silence. Right at the end, a single word. "Mark." I deleted it immediately, changed my number the next day. I've never gone back to that forest.